Okay. Um, Welcome to another session of Blue Island 101. My name is Randy Heuser. Also with us is Tom Hawley and Bill Farrenwald. Last week we talked about the revenues of the city of Blue Island, and today we'll be discussing the expenses of the city of Blue Island.
And as usual, we are monitoring the YouTube comments and the Zoom chat. So if you have any questions during the session, please feel to type away with them, and then we'll do our best to answer them during the session.
So last week we did talk about the amount of money that comes in, and we said it was $30 million, and it just seems like an awful lot of money, and it is an awful lot of money. But as you'll see throughout the conversation tonight, we spend quite a bit of it on services and stuff like that for the city. It's all for that. Out of the $30 million, there's almost half of it, or probably over half of it, is salaries. And then when you add to that their employment expenses and Social Security, and then the pension, health insurance, uniform allowances, and training, it is a solid 50% of the cost of what we spend. It's about $14.5 million a year. Salaries are 8.6 million, 5.9 in employment expenses for taxes and pension, etc. And then some smaller amounts for uniform and training.
And I might just also add, Randy, before you jump in there, that expense is large, but due to various economy measures that we have taken over the years, it is a very lean staff that we have. We could probably use some more people in a few areas, but we have to, as much as that money is, we could spend more.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. But speaking of health insurance, when an employee retired from the city years ago with 20 years of service, the city would pick up 100% of the health insurance cost for the rest of their life. And that practice has been stopped. So new retirees have no post-employment insurance provided. But fortunately, we've had some loyal employees over the years, but we still have several employees that were paying their full health insurance.
Yeah, when we changed it a few years ago, of course, the vast majority were still grandfathered in. So
right.
So we'll have that for a number of years into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So our next largest expense, and we talked about this a little bit last week as well, is buying water from the city of Chicago. In 2019, we paid $3.1 million to the city of Chicago, and that's for the water and getting it to us.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the money that comes into the water fund goes to pay for that, and then there are the salaries related to keeping the system working, and when they're out there in below zero weather digging up frozen water mains, you appreciate you can't pay those people enough. Let me tell you, it's you don't have water and it's because of a frozen water main, and they're out there digging and standing in water. It's not a job I would like to do. So
and that's why it's really important to have good reserves too, because if we have a major project that needs to be done, kind of like we had on 127th a few years ago, where we had a collapsed sewer. It's better than having to pay interest on bonds when we have major projects. So we're kind of coming along with that.
Definitely. And so some of the adjustments in the water rates that have happened over the most recent years is to get that more in line, so that we are more than covering, so that we can start building up that reserve to start taking care of some of these major problems. The city's very old. Our sewer system is very old. So, anything that goes wrong is usually a very major expense, and it's not easy to do.
No.
And you see, like Randy was saying earlier, and you see it a lot during the winter. Those mains, get frozen, break down, and if it's just one little break somewhere and it's on a side street, that doesn't matter. The city's got to
Right.
come in there with a full crew, dig it all up. That's a big
Right.
project, and it's one little tiny part of our system.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then some other large expenses are vehicle maintenance and repair. It's just over $300,000. Most of that is gas, so $185,000 is for gas and oil for the city's fleet of cars and trucks. We did some studies and we said that we would be better off buying some new equipment than repairing and constantly trying to work with breaking down equipment. And so over the last few years, I think we've purchased some new trucks and stuff for Public Works,
Right.
including Jim Polstro recommended some new plowing systems, which makes it easier for them to go down our narrow streets with cars on them. So we've done some smart purchasing, I think.
Mhm.
Approximately, I think in 2019 it said 345,000 for phones and phone equipment. I think in 2019 we bought a new system, right?
There was some new we transferred to a different provider. Yeah, and we did pretty well. And actually that expense has come down drastically. When we first got in office in 2013, we did a phone number audit and found that we had several lines that we were paying for that went nowhere. And then now with technology, like you mentioned, Tom, the voice over internet, we're further reducing that the number of lines throughout the city. So every chance we get, we're trying to make cuts in expenses. That's for sure.
And then another thing that people probably don't even really think about is we spend $288,000 just to have street lights and traffic signals in town.
Yeah, and it's again another.
And that adds up, you know how expensive your electric bill can be at home. It's a lot of lights in the city if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It is indeed, and we have once again been able to achieve some. I think what's going to be a significant savings. People will notice shortly if they haven't already started. We've approved a streetlight upgrade to go to LED streetlights. You've seen some of that already in the alleys. Where ComEd maintains the streetlights in most of the alleys on the wooden poles, but the city poles that are the metal poles, we are now going to upgrade many of them to LED, and it will reduce the cost of electricity in the coming year or so, and will be another significant savings that we'll be able to achieve there.
And that is an interesting little tidbit that Bill said, is that the city, all the metal poles the city owns, and all of the wooden poles are the ones that ComEd takes care of those lights. So if there's lights out on a wooden pole, we actually have to go through ComEd to get those fixed, and the ones on the metal poles are the ones that the city takes care of.
And unfortunately, with the LEDs coming in, there'll be a lot fewer burned out lights to report. Those they have a much longer life. So
yes,
and that's an expense. When there is a burned out bulb, our crew's got to go out with the truck and get up on the man lift and do it, and that all takes time. So that'll be another savings for us to achieve.
Definitely. But then, of course, there's we had $855,000 in engineering fees. Which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. But every single project that is done by the city, and it has, phase one, phase two. There's at least 2 or 3 phases of engineering, and some of these projects can take years to even get from the point where you say yes, we're going to do this, to the point where you actually start to see some ground being dug up. I mean, how long were we hearing about the Western Avenue Bridge being rebuilt, and they were worried about space and everything else? It's been 3 or 4 years, and then they finally started that this year, right? It's been it takes a long time.
Sure.
And I sit on the Municipal Services Committee, where a lot of that engineering work comes through, and you're right. There's just a tremendous amount of thought that has to be given to these things, and partly it's because, again, we only have so many dollars to spend. So there's a need to develop a priority, because there's many, many things that need to be done. We just can't do them all. So we rely on our engineering expertise to determine, which are most urgent. Obviously, maybe there's a situation that just simply can't wait. and then, which maybe have the greatest benefit to the city behind that, and then start lining things up in a logical fashion. So that all needs to be planned, and it's very important. And it just takes some money and some time to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the major things that everyone complains about are streets and alleys. All of that, there's engineering behind that. We did a street plan where we went through and we rated all the streets a few years ago. We just went through another one recently that just got talked about at the last meeting or the one before that. And what that does is it helps us with how much it's going to cost to fix that street. And then it helps us to plan so that if we get a CDBG grant or something like that, we can say, okay, we can do this section of the street or something like that.
Right.
To completely rebuild the street, it can be about $300,000 to do one block. So, and that includes curbs and looking at the sewer, lining the sewer.
Right. You're giving away next week's topic, Tom.
No, that's next week. Oh, okay.
Actually, next week we are going to talk about the roads and who owns what roads and the cost to maintain all the roads, and we'll talk extensively about that report that was brought up and come up with a plan.
All right, so forget about everything I just said.
No, not forget. But yeah, that's a hot topic in the city. So yeah, we're definitely going to spend one session on that. So
it's the most frequently asked question aldermen get. That's for sure.
Yes,
indeed.
And then in 2019, we spent $475,000 in legal fees, and that's everything just from like simple trip and fall in the city to anything to like somebody hurts themselves, an employee hurts himself, to anything major that can come along. It seems like we're forever settling suits that have been going on for it seems like decades. So and then of course all those settlements rack up and cost quite a bit of money as well. And that's a little bit less. In 2019, we had $2.1 million in legal claims and settlements. So that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of cash to come up with. A number of times we've talked about getting into some sort of pool to sort of try and spread that money out. But we haven't had a really good track record, so we're not a very attractive partner, shall we say.
Yeah, we'll be able to, hopefully next year we'll be able to look at that again in 2021 or 22, that we should be able to get something put together, at least when we start to see, all these put together, all these costs put together, I think we'll be able to get some insurance some way, shape or form.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I've spoken about this a few times before. It is a concern that we're uninsured. And it also tends to maybe, I don't know, artificially or whatever, it just restricts some things that we'd like to do as a city. But we really have to really look at the risk very, very closely at anything that we do, because we're uninsured. And so it's really, I personally don't feel comfortable committing the city to projects that aren't absolutely necessary. There's some things, a number of things the city has to do, fire, police, so forth and so on. But anything else, sometimes it might be a perceived benefit. It would be a benefit. If there's too much risk attached to it, we just can't afford to go there. So that's an important thing.
Another huge expense, which is covered by what people pay as part of their water bill, is $1.3 million in garbage collection services. And we recently switched to this new service. Some people like them. Some people aren't so thrilled with them. I've gotten both sides of that coin. So as far as complaints, and I've also gotten some good comments too. So I do find that if I call the number that's right on the garbage can, I get pretty good results and services, and people do listen to you. So, I always start out that I'm an alderman, so that may help move it along a little bit further than if you call. But if you try calling them if you have a problem and see if you can work that out themselves, and then call us and one of the aldermen or city officials
Right.
if you have a problem. But I've had very good luck calling them
Yeah.
on that
And
number.
sometimes, it's difficult. There are certain rules actually about, what garbage, how the garbage has to be put in bins and so forth. For instance, I had someone recently near me who their recycling, wasn't getting picked up. And so there was a problem, and I checked, and I found that they were putting their recycling stuff in plastic bags in the bin. And that's, I think for kind of obvious reasons, the plastic isn't recyclable. And so they're part of the condition of their contract with us is that they will not pick up something that's in plastic bag. So the resident didn't understand that. And I think that they felt initially like, well, gee, they're not doing their job because they're not picking up, it was a couple of weeks going by. And once we resolved it, that was fine. Now I will say, probably would have been helpful maybe if the company could have put a sticker on the can to, let them know why they weren't getting the thing picked up. But those are resolvable things. And I do people want their garbage picked up when it's not, it's upsetting. And I think we all understand that. But in my experience, I agree with you, Tom. I found that when you do go and, deal with it, there's usually some reason behind it and it can be resolved.
Yeah. The other thing is that does include that fee that we pay to Lakeshore does include our several dumpsters every day that we in bulk pickup. So that's included in that cost.
Do they do Western Avenue garbage cans too?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so it's not just the residential garbage, but that's part of the service they offer, and they do the pickup at the city as well. But the bulk pickup, all your old couches and carpet and whatnot that gets picked up, that's part of that $1.3 million as well.
Well, and that's a huge expense because the dumpsters that they go through at Public Works, just picking up all the stuff.
Oh yeah.
And we're one of the very few cities anymore that allows that to happen all during the year and no matter when. Most cities have got one day in the spring and one day in the fall just to do it all at once because it is very expensive to offer that service every week. It's one thing we feel like we'll get really crucified for if we can get rid of it though.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about it is that I know we've talked about it, and the fact is that people put stuff out whether it is going to get picked up or not. So we're going to pick it up because we don't want Blue Island to be piled in refuse and garbage. So it just is part of the cost of doing business, basically.
Yeah. So, and in case you don't know, they try to come out the day after for the large stuff, the day after your regular garbage pickup. So don't run out there. If you put it out on the weekend and your garbage pickup day is Thursday, then the city comes around on Friday to pick up the large bulk stuff. So that's why sometimes it may seem like it's sitting there for a while. So try and plan that a little bit so that the city doesn't look all junked up in between days.
Yeah.
And maybe to put that, what is it, Tom? 1.7 million is the
1.3.
1.3 million. To also kind of put that in perspective, we've talked about this before, but I think it's always worth mentioning that when you look at the revenue side of it, and again, folks pay property taxes and they're high, and they feel too high, and maybe they are. But it's important to remember that Blue Island only gets about, something like 15% of the property taxes. So if I'm looking at the line of revenue the city got for property taxes in 2019 versus we paid $1.3 million for garbage collection. Total property tax payments that we receive from our residents is 3.4 million roughly. So we know that everyone expects the return on their dollar, and we understand that. But it is important to keep in mind that the property tax revenue goes to a lot of different places. Schools is a huge consumer of property taxes, various districts, and so forth. So it all gets spent somehow. We don't get to spend all of it.
A couple of smaller expenses, $13,000 in animal care. So that's, when your dog is out loose and the cops pick them up and take them to doggy jail, they usually get fed or something. And we're supposed to have, in maybe people don't realize this, but there is a license that you're supposed to have for your dogs and probably pets in general. I think it's $5 a year, and I believe I heard some ridiculously low number of dog tags that had been sold, and I see more dogs than that just walking around my house in the morning. So I think people have gotten away with that for a while, but $5 a year would go to help pay for some of this these scofflaw dogs that get out and wreak havoc.
And the other thing is that if they are in our possession more than, I think it's 3 days, we have to bring them to Chicago Ridge, to the animal shelter there, and that costs the city $100 a day per animal.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
It's high, so we don't. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Best thing you can do is get chips in your animals. Our police have ways of scanning that, and they can get your animal back to you very quickly if they have that, or get in contact with you and get you back in touch with them very quickly.
Yeah.
And the dogs don't even have to get vaccinated to get a chip put in them, right? They can do it some other way. Just joking there. And an expense that we don't have here because we don't do it anymore, and one that I really regret and hope we can get back to is that we don't have any budget and don't spend anything on planting trees in our city parkways. The parkways are city property, and all the trees there are city property, and so we're responsible for maintaining those trees. And there's a fairly good expense in terms of taking down and pruning dead or dying trees. And some years ago, just because the times are tight, and the decision was made to eliminate the budget for tree replacement. And city, Blue Island is a city of trees. It's been a subject I've been really interested in, and I'd like to see us try to find a way to do that. I know money is tight, but there is no budget to plant trees, and so we've had some great volunteer efforts in the last few years where we've planted several hundred trees, but that really is just not even keeping up with the trees that we're losing, and that's really important to town. So.
That has been a great program, and it has been several hundred trees. And then when you think about it, and I've helped on many of those days of planting, and it's just it's barely a drop in the bucket compared to what could be out there. It's amazing considering you think several hundred trees is a lot of trees, but it's really not.
Yeah, we have tens of thousands of trees in this town, and they provide a lot of benefits in addition to being nice looking. Yeah.
So we have $60,000 in bank fees in 2019, $44,000 in postage. That's actually didn't seem too bad to me considering you're mailing out stuff a couple times a month to everybody. So there's not much you can do. Of course, postage and shipping always goes up every year. And then, of course, $96,000 in 2019 for road salt. If I remember correctly, 2019 was pretty mild, so I think that was a good year for road salt.
we had budgeted 150,000, so yeah, you're right. It was definitely a light year for road salt. Yeah,
and you have to remember that certainly the cost of the road salt is kind of just the starter there when you talk about snow clearing.
Oh yeah,
obviously you have vehicle miles, wear and tear, gas, and then we have a lot of overtime if it's a big storm or a big winter. There's a lot of overtime that racks up there, so it's important, it's critical, and our public works department, I think, does a fantastic job, but it costs money.
And we get our road salt from the Illinois procurement, and we just we get a very, very, very affordable rate. If we went over our if we needed more than our allotment, it's like 10 times the cost to get it on the open market than you get from the state procurement. So.
I think we had to do that one year. I believe it was a really bad year.
Yeah. The county actually helped us out a little bit, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yep.
Probably
that was.
So I was just going to say, kind of to put it in all in some kind of perspective. I'm looking here at the total that after we've been talking about all these little numbers like 10,000 or 100,000 or $1 million. At the end of it, the regular operating budget of the city comes to, well, for 2019 was $1,871,000. And that was not all the money the city spent, because there are a number of other expenditures that occur through various funds that the city also performs projects through. But that's kind of just the general basic keep the lights running and keep the streets clear, all that kind of stuff. $16.7 million.
Well, anything else anyone would like to add? I mean, we just kind of did we dove in pretty good, but we didn't, get to the individual expenses. But that's a pretty 30,000 foot view overview of the expenses of the city. Anyone anything else? Anyone?
One thing the viewers might, consider doing, not all the time, but once in a while, would be to, it's on video now, or on YouTube and on Zoom, is to watch a finance committee meeting. You can see there how it, what actually goes into this finance committee meets twice a month or every other week. I'm not quite sure which, but they, and they have to go through, this is, what the finance committee does is run through all these things at every single meeting. So if you want to get a little bit better idea of what what goes on a day-to-day basis with that, check out the finance committee meeting, and you can get a little bit more insight to what goes on.
All right.
Well, thank you, Tom, for bringing us up to speed.
All right.
And we are, again, if you are listening on YouTube, you make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll get notifications of the next meeting that's coming up, as well as be able to view past sessions. They're all posted on our YouTube channel.
Yep, and like we spoke about a little while ago, our next session will be on streets and the ownership and maintenance of, and that should be an interesting one. It's really kind of a lot of deferred maintenance in the city of Blue Island. So anyway, thanks for listening. Hope the session's been informative for you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Right.